Hello, thanks for joining me for Samuel, 2nd Samuel in summer. Today is Sunday, June 6th, and this is the 6th chapter of the second book of Samuel. This is the chapter that is most joyously depicted in a film that was made about King David's life starring Richard Gere. I would encourage you to look it up and watch it because this scene that is pretty much played out in our imaginations as we read chapter 6 is especially memorable from the film that it's a very old film. I think it was from the 80s. But Richard Gere plays King David and he dances before the Lord in his little ephod. So here is, we know that we have a king in Israel now, the prince of all of Egypt, or Israel, forget about the other movie. The king of all of Israel, the head of that state, the head of those people is David, the anointed king. And of course, we know, because we have hindsight now, David, the most popular and most successful king of all of Israel's history. David brings the Ark of the Covenant into Jerusalem in increments. Okay? So this is what happens. The Ark of the Covenant is traveled to, is chosen, they choose to travel, transport it to Jerusalem to be in the city of David. And so they carried the Ark on a new cart and brought it out of the house of Amminadab, who had it. So, and Amminadab's two sons, Uzzah and Ahio, it's like Ohio with an A in front, Ahio, the two sons, Uzzah and Ahio, they were driving the cart. And what happened was the oxen shook the cart, the oxen shook the cart, and Uzzah reached out to grab the ark and I would assume to right it. And of course, you're not supposed to touch it. So the Lord struck him dead right there. And henceforth, that place that happened is called Perez Uzzah. So that is kind of the place I would like to see when I go to the Holy Land the most. Just because this story has always haunted me since Sunday school. And I remember talking about it in an Old Testament class, that God would smite this poor kid just for trying to make sure the ark didn't fall out. What kind of warning is that? What kind of reality is that? What kind of message is this in? There's so many questions around this whole thing. And he knew he wasn't supposed to touch it, but it almost sounds like what he did was instinctual. Like, oh, we don't want it to fall. So this thing spooked David so much when Uzzah was struck dead that David said, okay, knock, knock. Can you keep the ark for a little while? Because I'm not sure I want to bring it into my city yet. And the guy that he leaves the ark with, Nacon, is it Nacon or is it somebody else? Oh no, Obed-Edom. They get to the house of Obed-Edom the Gittite, and that's where they were going to Nacon's threshing floor, but that's where they decide to drop off the ark and see what happens. So when the ark is at the household of Obed-Edom, the household flourishes. Good things happen. Where the ark goes, good things happen, as long as the people around it are faithful and follow the rules associated with the ark. So when David learns after 3 months that Obed-Edom's family and household has flourished because the ark is there, David said, well, maybe it's safe to bring it in. So David does all kinds of sacrifices, dances as hard as he can. That's what describes it. I'm going to find the words. He danced his little heart out. It doesn't say it like that, but he says there's something that the way they describe how David dances, dances his little heart out, dance before the Lord, and I just wish I could find it. the exact wording. I can't remember it, but he dances his little heart out. And in this last processional into the city of David, he is very scantily clad. He's wearing what's described as an ephod. That's I don't know what that means, but that's all he was wearing. Whatever that was. I hope it wasn't a hat, right? So he's wearing something, and his wife, Michal, who probably looked at him with disdain anyway, because I kind of think she might have been happy in her household, and then he tore her away from her home and brought her to be his wife again. She sees him embarrass himself in front of everyone and really mentions the maids. And maybe she doesn't mean like the servants. She really means like the unmarried women in the community. You're embarrassing yourself in front of them. And, but David responds the way a lot of people in modern day respond about their religious fervor. I will be more, sort of Paul gives us an example of this in some of his letters. I will be more ashamed of myself. I would do anything. I would debase myself for God, to show how important God is. That God, please don't smite me because I brought this ark to my city. But no, he's really zealous after the Lord. And so that's this dancing and this scantily cladness is proof of that. And he has this argument with Michal, who despises him. And when he gets finished tearing down Michal argumentatively, she is no longer bearing a child. So she has no child that she bears David. And from that day forward, she has no child that she bears David. And to the day of her death, she had no child. So that's kind of the worst thing that you can have as a woman in that day and age is to be barren. Remember, this whole thing started with a barren woman, Hannah. She prayed for a son, and then she had Samuel, and now we have 2 books with his name on it. But I want you to think about objects. So what they were doing was a common ancient Near East practice. When you brought your god or your whatever not resembled your god, but whatever totem you had to represent your god, you brought that into the city. There was a big celebration and feasting. There was a lot of sacrifice, and everybody got a cake and a raisin cake and a piece of meat, and everybody of Israel feasted that day when the ark was brought into Jerusalem. So this is an example of an ancient Near East practice when the totems or the statues or whatever you got to represent your God, in this case it's an ark that contains the 10 commandments, that represents your God, or the holiest of holies, the kadosh, which is the Hebrew word for the holiest of holies. That is which wouldn't be for the other cultures, but the other ancient Near Eastern cultures would have the same kind of celebration when they brought the totem or whatever it was in. And this is the Judeo-Christian tradition of a totem, basically. It's this object that had so much significance. And that would be the only explanation for the death of Uzzah, by touching it. It's so special. So I want you to think about things in your life that may be like this ark, that are wonderful, that possess special powers, that they're ancient, that they're dangerous, perhaps. I don't know. But what is it that represents your faith that you cannot live without? And if this thing was taken from you, could you still have your faith? So this is the problem. They didn't have the ark. It wasn't there for a really, really long time. It went to different places, and it stayed in people's homes. And then they brought it into Jerusalem, and because they were bringing it into Jerusalem, they were really happy about that, and a big celebration and raisin cakes and everything. But I just think that maybe that's part of the message here for us. Like, if the scripture is inspired, which I believe it is, and it's teaching us and talking to us today, the lesson may be about the objects that we ascribe specific spiritual identification to, or specific spiritual authority that has it, like things that are objects that represent our faith that we would never take for granted, or sometimes we do, because like I said, 20 years the ark's over here and this person's, and it's been with Abby Noam or Aminadab, what's his name again, Abinadab. It's been his house for a really, really long time. So I just think about those objects. What are they for you? And maybe that's part of the lesson from chapter 6. So I hope you have a beautiful rest of the day.